we're live with the second session. So in this session, we'll have really a discussion about how teleoperation can be a solution to the structural challenges of the industry, and mainly which industry are we talking about? Well, we are talking about the domain of transport and logistics. That's the subtitle of our first forum of today, and I'm really honored indeed to have this panel to debate about this. Which I will present one by one now with a few more details so that you really can grasp the background of our experts in the room. So let me just look on my notes. So first of all is Lynn Canavan. She's Director of Ecosystems for Real-Time Innovations, or RTI, where she oversees the company's partners, consortia, and university program initiatives. In this role, she works with third-party organizations to extend the RTI Connect software framework to enable complex autonomous solutions to run from cloud to edge. She's also the Vice President of Marketing for the DDS Foundation and the VP of Program Management for the Industrial Internet Consortium. Before that, she was a marketing executive at IBM, and she received her Bachelor in Science in Management from the University of Massachusetts and a mini MBA from Rutgers University. So, Lynn, welcome to this panel. Next panelist is Amit Rosensweig. He's from Utopia. Amit loves marrying technology with customer needs and has been doing so over the last 14 years. Before founding Utopia, he was head of product of Microsoft's leading cybersecurity offering, VP product at the company building low latency wireless video solutions, and head of the cybersecurity R&D department in the IDF's AT200 unit. Amit is also a graduate of the prestigious Talpiot program. So Amit, also very welcome in this panel. Our third panelist of today is Martin Kralick. He's the CEO of RoboAuto, a robotics startup located in Brno in the Czech Republic. RoboAuto is developing a teleoperation solution guaranteeing robust system with strong set of features, tailored precisely to meet even the most demanding requirements and European safety standards. It works mainly in test automation and verification field. Again, Martin, also very welcome and great to have you here. Our next panelist is Yala Stephens from Noord Seaport. Yala has 15 years of professional experience in the construction industry with a strong focus on large-scale modular construction and prefabrication projects, greenfield and brownfield. He has an international experience on oil and gas, renewables, nuclear, mining, and infrastructure projects. He's familiar with management of simultaneous projects and has commercial and project management responsibilities, not only in the UAE, but also USA, Latin America, MEA, and Australia. So Yala, I'm very happy to have you on board. And our last, but definitely not least panelist is Siray Ahmed Shaikh. He is a professor of system security and currently director of research at the Institute of Future Transport and Cities at Coventry University. From February 2015 till May 2016, he was second to the Knowledge Transfer Network, which is an innovation network in Britain. He served as cybersecurity lead for the KTN coordination activities. He was also second the Horaiba Maira as part of the Royal Academy of Engineering, and he founded CyberOwl, which is a VC-backed commercial venture in developing early warning systems for cyber threats. Siray, it's also an honor to have you here, and I look forward to your insights. So, with no further ado, I would like to really start the debate instead of you all just listening to me read out a paper. I think the debate will be a lot more interesting. So let's see if we have something in the Q&A to spark this discussion. Not yet. I see that the questions are mainly about the previous session. So luckily we have some backup questions to get started. I would like to start with one very relevant for today is the shortage of truck drivers. I think it's been clear in the UK, if you don't manage this issue, which you can see everywhere, if you let that escalate, you can really get into trouble. There is no turkey for Christmas, there's no fuel for your car anymore. That's really an issue. So in a lot of contexts, you hear that teleoperation is being presented as a solution for that. You can attract people who don't want to be away from home all week, because it could be an office job to drive a truck. It's more safe, so we could attract more women, for instance. I think only 2% of truck drivers today are women, so there's definitely something wrong with the profession. So theoretically, great solution to solve the truck driver issue. But the other way around, maybe truckers, maybe they like being away from home. Maybe you would scare these people away if you make it an office job. So this is really a solution to the truck driver shortage that we can look towards, teleoperation. That's the main question, the main topic, and I really look forward to all the insights my dear panelists can bring on that. So please, if you want to take the floor, just take it or raise your hand, and I can give it to you as you see fit.
So this is Lynn Canavan, and I'll go first. So right now, it's estimated that there's a shortage of 400,000 truck drivers in the EU, and as you mentioned in the UK, their situation is even worse. The average age of the truck driver is 50 years old, and it's just not attracting the younger people are just not being attracted to this career choice. And so I think that teleoperations, I think the previous speakers yielded that there's a lot of terrific work that's going on. We're not quite there yet, but I think looking forward to the future, there is a lot of promise for this in terms of being able to enhance the workforce, being able to provide additional supplement additional shortages that they have. So somebody from teleoperations, again, we're not quite there yet, but at some point in the future, somebody can work remotely from a location where there is more available staff or workers, and they can operate more than one truck. They can help prevent some of this, especially when you come to last mile delivery. So the freight comes in from the port and so forth. You've got the long distance, and then you have the short distance. I think teleoperations in particular is going to be more helpful for the last mile delivery type, and that's where you start seeing things like not only trucking but also the drones and the robotics and things like that. So certainly it shows promise, and I think that it's looking forward to the future. That is something that will be more attractive as things like the regulatory, the safety, and all the other aspects come together.
Okay, thank you, Lynn, for opening. That's always someone has to take the first step. So indeed, that focus on last, but there is clear potential in business-wise, and the last mile would be the first place where you look for it. Is this something the other panelists recognize? You also thinking the same, or want to challenge these statements? Anyone who? Yeah, I see Amit raising his hand. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I will try just continue. I would say that this is just only beginning. We can see that the moment COVID-19 caused devastating labor shortage, for example, in German farms. They need over 300,000 of seasonal workers. So it's not only about the truck drivers, but it's more wider problem. So I would start more generally. I think that automation is the solution, and teleoperation is part of the equation. It's not the solution itself, I think. There is important to merge between the teleoperation and automation/autonomy.
Okay, thank you, Martin. I saw Amit also raised his hand. So can you comment on that? Can you complement on that?
I agree with my colleague. Hi, Martin. So just 2 seconds of background. We are Utopia. We are a software company. We develop teleoperation software, both for remote control, but mostly remote assistance, the capability to assist a level 4 vehicle. Doesn't matter if it's a small robot or a huge excavator or anything in between, trucks, forklifts. We have done everything, and we keep doing everything with giant companies such as Motional and Hyundai. All of it is public info. So what we see in the market, I'm an engineer. My background is in engineering. I founded the company to help automation, to help autonomous solutions to become a reality. And from the market, from the data, the customers, we see that teleoperation is the enabler for introducing level 4 systems across all verticals. But I agree with your previous comment that we see first adoptions in last mile, and then in trucks, and then in robotaxis. So these are the verticals where we see the earliest adoption because of the need, because of the capital that exists. So if you ask me, what is the role of teleoperation in relation to truck driver shortage, it needs to come together with the automation of those trucks, for example, highway trucks, and it is an absolute enabler for the level 4 system to be able to unlock its full potential to actually achieve any kind of situation to be high performant enough, thanks to the fact that you have a human in the loop. And by the way, it is not surprising that the regulation says the same, including in the UK, in 8 states in the United States. Many geographies have already mandated that teleoperation is an absolute must if you want to deploy anything that is fully autonomous.
Okay, thanks a lot for commenting on that. I think I also see raised the hand of Sirai, so please, I would like to give you the floor now.
Thank you, Wim. So I just want to follow up on Lynn's comment. I'm intrigued. The drivers come up. Obviously, it's one of the kind of structural challenges. So one of the things we had raised about teleoperation in the national debate here in the UK, one of the key pieces of feedback which kind of came back was how the perception of this technology amongst the drivers and amongst a certain group of professionals in the logistics industry, particularly, kind of, the perception that they carry about what impact it would have on jobs and everything else and so on. And what is interesting is what we feel is that there is a disconnect between that and our desire in industry, in certain parts of the industry for sure, to upskill the drivers. So really, this is not about replacing the drivers. It is about upskilling potentially, but is also about creating new jobs. And I just wanted to get the view of the panelists and the audience here as to how much do they see that from that lens, because I just think that value proposition of teleoperation, not just as a single technology, but as a whole system and as a sectoral shift, bringing together a number of other benefits, that value proposition, I think, isn't sold necessarily, well, or at least what we saw in the response we had in a number of kind of discussion forums is that the perception that is carried is very narrow. So it'll be good to just understand that and just to share with you, that's what kind of we have found. I wonder if other national sectors have found something similar, or is that just maybe a unique concern to the UK?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I can also react to that, following on to what Lynn said and Siraj said. So with us in the port, we're looking at the whole supply chain and all actors in there. And the truck driver job is what we call a bottleneck job. They are very scarce and becoming even more scarce. What Lynn said is it's an overall aging active population. With this teleoperation, you could create more. It's also a work-life balance solution. Normally, a truck driver can't take like a half day of a holiday, so that maybe he chooses another job because he also wants to be part of the family, for example, to look after his household. On the other hand, when you need to be fit, a certain level of fitness for being a truck driver. So a lot of people, when they're not perfectly fit, they can't work on their truck because they're still recovering from a medical procedure, something like that. So when you want to reactivate them, they can start work half days, when normally as a truck driver, it's impossible to start working half days. So it's indeed next to the lifelong learning, what Siraj said, getting more sustainable jobs, and also being a work-life balance solution.
Which makes me think, just while I'm hearing this discussion, so we are looking at the last mile first and the work-life balance, but maybe I'm wrong, but if you have all these last mile routes to be taken, is that not done by someone who only operates that main port and can have a work-life balance because he's not doing long-haul international?
Well, even then, the truck driver and the truck are very much connected to each other. So they're not going to just switch trucks during one day. With teleoperation, that would be a plannable thing. Also, you can even switch the truck without physically having to go to the truck and then change it with another driver. You could just switch in the teleoperation room, which is much easier and plannable.
Okay, so indeed.
But I agree on the long haul. A long haul is different than short haul. But even on the short haul, it's not that easy to take like a couple of hours of holiday. It's not. It's very difficult. It has an effect on the whole planning and on the utility rate of the vehicle.
Yeah, well, with teleoperators, you would use the strength of the swarm, so to say. There's always someone else in the operator center that can take over the rest of your shift if you just have a good SLA on the operator center versus the drives that need to be covered during that shift, basically. Okay, but it's good to see that there is no conflict between where we think we can deploy first, where the operational design domain would be doable, these shorter hauls, and then the problem of attracting truck drivers. So that's very interesting to hear. I think, Martin, you want to take the floor?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quickly follow up. I think it's important to mention that the whole teleoperation story is actually not, at least from my perspective, not about the transferring today's drivers to the teleoperators. I believe that we are talking about the completely new role for the next generation of the people. Because these people have completely different user profile, expectations, abilities than current driver, So as already heard, they value their time, free time, and often, for example, prefer several part-time jobs. So there are completely different expectations, and at least from our experience and from our tests, when we have our operators actually controlling and observing our operational systems, I cannot imagine that I put in the control seat someone who is actually who has usual average driver profile, So I can say, man, over between the 40 and 50 years, to put it in front of the system, and
But still, Martin, it's true. You have a different type of person, but still, that person today, truck driver, is a skilled, experienced person because he needs to see how different vehicles react, but he also needs to be trained periodically and certified. So the person that you're talking about will need to have all skills of a truck driver.
Yeah,
so maybe it's interesting to see lifelong learning. That's what I meant. You look at your truck drivers. Of course, not everybody will be interested, but not everything will become teleoperation as well. So there will be also a human factor, and people will need to be triggered to keep on learning and keep on evolving in these technologies.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's not so about the hard skills, and I agree that you have to be able to drive the vehicle, and it's preferable to have all the experience. But I think this is more or less about the mind shift, about the way how we can work, the way what is the whole user experience. And at least from my experience, I think it's much more harder to change it. It's quite easy to learn new hard skill if you have, potentially, if you have but it's really hard to do a mind shift.
And I think that can be interesting. That so the statement is an operator is not a driver that you transfer to the operating room. It's another profile, another kind of person. The good thing is that you don't get into issues with labor organizations saying that you are killing jobs, you are creating new ones. So that's a positive message to bring. This makes me wonder, is there a downside to it for the business case? Because this operator profile, Yala just mentioned that you have to train this person more. It could become a more expensive profile, maybe, I don't know, but maybe than today's drivers.
Well, expensive or an extra bottleneck, because the people that Martin is talking about is also already a bottleneck job. Combining it with another bottleneck job, I think we will need to find solutions for both career paths then, because otherwise you have two bottlenecks, which is even worse than one.
But I think that's where technology comes into play too, because right now we're just talking about the driver and basically helping and enhancing that driver experience. When you talk about autonomous vehicles and where autonomous vehicles come into play, then you can use, again, we're not quite there yet for mainstream trucking and so forth, but the technology itself will help the autonomous vehicles. And that is where you're going to displace some of the drivers. But again, those jobs aren't being filled right now anyway, but that is, there are bigger conversations and bigger implications. But when we get to the point, because we will get to that point where there are autonomous vehicles, that is going to help alleviate some of that bottleneck and help the industry. So, and that is, I think, firmly where we're going. So you've got driver, then you've got teleoperations, and then you've got it fully autonomous. And there's this this spectrum. And where are we on the spectrum? We're still very firmly in the part where there's the driver in the truck as we migrate through.
And one has to consider that the two jobs are really different. The job of the truck driver today is objectively very, very harsh. Being away for so long, being on the road, your back aches, you need to find the rest spots, not all the time you can find them. It's a very difficult job compared to, sitting in a station like one of the stations we have here behind, where we constantly improve those stations. You're sitting comfortably in a chair, no vibrations, no noise, air conditioned properly. You're close to your family. So I think the bottlenecks are really different. The bottleneck for finding someone who's willing to sit at a desk job, I think is less substantial than finding someone who is willing to be on the road all his life. And that's also from our experience when we train people and find people to operate pilots together with our partners. It's not difficult at all. There is a certain appeal even to be part of this new product, part of the revolution. Across all sectors, not just in trucking, but also in robotaxi programs that we run with our customers. It's fairly easy, based on my personal experience, to find people who want to do this job because it's very different and has its own benefits.
Okay, so indeed the bottleneck then might not really be finding the people to do it, because indeed, to your experience, it's an attractive job to be doing. I can really imagine that, by the way. But then the other element, the cost. So indeed, this could be a more expensive profile maybe, and there are other costs next to all the technology, but just looking at the people you need, because if you don't have the driver physically in the vehicle anymore, the driver does more than driving. It latches the cargo, it inspects the vehicle before starting if everything's okay and so on. You need to put that in someone else's hands. That will cost money. Is it getting too expensive in terms of additional people you need to be economically viable, or is the technology giving you so much more efficiency gains that this is not a problem at all? It's also possible, of course.
So I think that the technology is making up for those efficiency gains. So as you mentioned, so if somebody is a physical truck driver, he or she have to come outside the truck. They have to inspect the cargo and so forth. If that is being operated through teleoperation, you have sensors. You have a lot of sensors, and they can say, you know, on the left side it's loose, it's not at the right tension, and so forth. And so the technology itself, I think that the technology can make up for some of the gains, and can and again, we'll be able to monitor and assess where the, you know, the safety of the vehicle and the cargo and so forth as the in route and in process. And so it doesn't, I don't think you have to fully replace that person. You might need a checkpoint, you know, or something, but I think that the technology itself that is surrounding the truck should be able to fulfill some of the capabilities that a human would have done.
Okay, unless someone wants to add to that last comment of Lynn. Otherwise, I'll check a bit the questions, because we have some questions coming in. So now we have the time, so I would really like to bring them to our panelists. So there was actually a question on what we just mentioned, that that you need to do more than driving. So there's a question from someone, anonymously. To what extent can you include all sorts of other driver tasks into teleoperation? It's not only about driving functions, I guess. That's the question. Is there anyone from the panel who can react to that?
Yes, so again, only talking from my experience, not I don't know about all situations, but from our experience, there are different kinds of offerings. Okay, so there is the teleoperation, but there is another aspect. For example, imagine you have an automated truck, which is completely driverless. For some parts of the journey, it had required remote assistance for some parts because the autonomy didn't know what to do. And then it gets to the depot, and it needs to get to the specific place where it needs to be, you know, take off the load. But there is some damage on the truck externally. Now, the person at the gate that identified, oh, there is this some damage at the truck, he needs to report to someone. So he cannot speak to the robot like, hey, Mr. Robot, please pay attention. So he needs to speak to someone. So teleoperation, if you think about it, exactly to your question, it's not just about, you know, driving something or providing a command to the vehicle actuation. It's more than that. It's a human to human communication, because at the other end, there is always a human. It doesn't matter if it's even in a construction site, if you're trying to automate and teleoperate a bulldozer or a crane, there is still humans around, and you need to be able to communicate with those humans on behalf of the robot. So if you think about the full scope of teleoperation, it's not just about helping the machine, AKA autonomy robot. It's also about helping the other humans that need to interact with that machine, not to mention, you know, first responders, police officers, if you're in a city, if you're trying to teleoperate a vehicle, a car. So yes, teleoperation is more than just the driving assistance or helping the vehicle to go from point A to point B. It's more than that. And of course, there are some issues like mechanical issues, electrical issues, actual unloading of stuff or loading of stuff that needs to be done by other systems, be them automatic forklifts or manual forklifts. I don't know. But teleoperation is not the solution to life and everything, but it is helping to achieve full autonomy and also enable the machine to interact with its vicinity. Doesn't matter if you're talking about a robocar in a city or a truck that is entering a depot.
Okay, thanks for that response and sharing these insights. Martin,
if I may add to that, Wim, so it will also autonomous transport will also push us into further digitalization. So also the sector is certainly in ports, sometimes rather conservative, where there are parties that are implementing digital solutions together to get paperless. Well, automation will really push them in that digitalization, and it's just it obliges a complete procedure that needs to be followed. When there's a human interaction, there can also be they can always skip a step in the procedure. With autonomous transport, that's not possible anymore. Also regarding the tasks that a truck driver normally executes, because he's not there anymore, it needs to be done, for example, at the depot. But it already happens today. So sometimes it will be difficult. In other cases, it will be quite easy, because if we're talking container loads, they're already being placed on the truck by the depot owner or the loader. They will just need to be lashed and secured then by that same party, because the truck driver is not there anymore. But it's solvable. It needs to be studied and needs to be discussed and agreed on how we can go towards a teleoperated or an autonomous future.
Thank you, Yala. I think that's very interesting. We said several times, I made the remark, teleoperation is the best friend of automation. But if you want to look at real deployment in the domain of transport and logistics, it's not just these two friends, but a triangle of people really having to come together, domains: digitalization, teleoperation, and automation. If you lose digitization, it won't fly practically, basically, is what I hear you say. And I think that's a very interesting insight. There's a lot of potential. We heard a lot of truck driver issue, a lot of things business-wise that are very appealing, but also a lot of things that need to come together, more than just technology, also processes, digitization. Certification was also mentioned for the operators and so on, legislation. That's very interesting to have as one of the main takeaways of today. Maybe I'll go to the question and answer panel and see if there's something else I can bring to our experts. The other question I had is, would you think that teleoperation puts more legal responsibility on truck drivers? For instance, when automation fails, or cybersecurity issues, mistakes due to delay in the network, and so on. So indeed, yeah, more things can go wrong. Does that make the operators more responsible? Maybe Sirai, from a security perspective, is there anything you can add to that?
No, thank you, Wim. Before I do that, if you don't mind, I'm going to pick up a point that Amit was talking about, which is very interesting, and I think Martin alluded to as well, which is what we started with the drivers. So we're involved in a few projects that are national projects, and the one I'm referring to has just started, so we have yet to get to the meat of it. But part of this is we have the National Transport Design Center, where colleagues working in human factors and design ergonomics, they are looking at the environment for the teleoperator, and how we study that environment very carefully. And I think, to Amit's points earlier as well, it is worth perhaps investigating and understanding how we make sure that whatever other sensory cues or other cues that drivers in their cabins have, perhaps are things that are replicated or somehow accounted for in the kind of teleoperation interface. And I think that's something, perhaps we need to be mindful of in the context of automation and digitization generally, because I think the physical presence in the cabin, of course, has certain physiological kind of impact. Yes, we have the backaches and everything else and so on, but it has it contributes to your situational awareness and to your cognitive kind of presence and so on, whereas a flat 2D screen perhaps may not do that. So there are lots of, there's a lot of research certainly in aerospace, in cockpit design, and of course in the automotive space, as well. And so it's worth looking at that, I think, and I think, certainly for heavy kind of goods vehicles, that is something to consider. So coming back to the point here now raised here, so indeed, that is a challenge. So going back to my very first point, in the kind of public forums where we've kind of proposition, that whole teleoperation approach, this is one of the points raised as well as to how confident we are that the safety and security kind of imperatives are met with the current kind of technology that we have and so on. Does this, I mean, for sure, the question arises purely from us as a security, as someone who's interested in security, does this open up a major part of the infrastructure to potential vulnerabilities to kind of, for state or non-state actors to exploit? Certainly a heavy goods vehicle is a very different, kind of a beast on the road. And if it's being remotely kind of, controlled and so on, operated and so on. So we'll have to, of course, address that. The point about liability here is very important. And I think this is the essence of the question, really. Who picks up that kind of liability and how we manage that? Because in the current passenger vehicle kind of market, we have this interesting scenario, don't we, where certainly it's icy roads these days where I am, any maneuvers that I do that are dependent on the design decisions that engineers have made in the supply chain that could lead to a safety incident or a violation, then I carry the liability for that, right? Of course, because I pay for my insurance here in the UK. So my question is, for security, where there's a constantly evolving threat landscape, once again, where does the boundary lie? So, and I think it's even more fuzzier, and I'm not suggesting that the OEMs or the suppliers completely pick it up. I think as a driver and as an owner of a system, I have some responsibility as well. But that question, I think, it becomes even more complex when you talk about teleoperation as a service, where people come in and, it's like a call center service environment potentially. And then at the other end, there's a heavy goods vehicle on the road. And then where are those kind of, boundaries in terms of, how you manage those liabilities? So I'm going to leave you with one use case, and which I think we should explore, but we don't have the time for this today. And I'm mindful that I've got a hard stop at 3 in my time here in the UK. I did a call center job a long time ago, when you have pagers, before mobiles even almost. And my call center job was very different to someone I knew who was an ex-colleague who worked for the National Air Traffic System here in the UK, because they have essentially a call center kind of an environment where they're managing the kind of air routes and air paths and so on. And so I think we need to look at those models. And they have interesting research there as well around fatigue, around once again that cognitive kind of perspective and understanding and environment where people can appreciate what is actually on the stake here and so on. So I think there are lots of research questions here, a lot more research projects, which I'm sure a lot of colleagues would explore. But it is, it's by no way it's a settled debate. Of course, it opens up a number of other things. So over to you, Martin, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great questions, and yeah, I want to actually follow up to Amit, but all this stuff is actually connected together. So I think it's really important to find what is actually hidden under the teleoperation umbrella. So if someone imagines that only camera streams and the transmission of control signals is actually under the of teleoperation, it will definitely not help improve safety. Teleoperation must be something much bigger and smarter. That's the point. So from our perspective, I can say that we aim to bring kind of semi-automation step between the human and full autonomous system. So the goal is actually combine the best of the human and technology, while mitigating the greatest hazards coming from the limitations of technology and human. So really, philosophically speaking, teleoperation, just from my perspective, is actually a merge between human and technology, at least for me. this is the broader context of the whole thing. And so, and with the question of the liability, it's really a hard question. And actually, I can say that I look to my crystal ball and and we'll see what happen in next 10, 20 years. I don't know, but from my perspective, I guess that the main teleoperation or robotic providers actually will be the insurance companies. So if I can say from my perspective as a robotic company or teleoperation provider, I think it's a really good thing to partner and work with the insurance companies, because that will be the moment and who actually takes the responsibility. And I fully agree that it's really hard to define what is the human fault, what is the technology fault, and now we have a technology between the human and technology. So it's really crazy thing. But I think that all these things goes to the insurance, and yeah.
Oh, you're reading my mind, Martin, because that was going to be my comment. You need to have an insurability study, and not only just for the tests that we're doing, but mainly when it comes to on a full scale. Then they will also look at, okay, how much of this can we implement, because it has an effect on the network. And for other technologies that they want to bring to market, they do these insurability statements from a consortium of insurers. And in all the projects that we are today, sometimes we miss the connectivity part, sometimes we miss the freight forwarders, but insurers are actually never connected in any of the projects that we are involved in. So that could be next step towards deployment.
Yeah,
full scale deployment.
And I'd like to add to that. I think you also need the regulatory as well. So there have to be some guidelines. There have to be some regulatory agreements in place, especially intra-company when you're talking about Europe as well. So you don't get to the border of one country and all of a sudden things change dramatically. But you need the regulatory in order to have the safety and the standards as well to make sure that things work.
Of course, that's a minimum, yeah.
Just a very brief 2 comments coming back to the question, which is the role of regulation and responsibility. So specifically responsibility, I think in some cases, we don't need to guess. If you read the regulation that passed in Germany or Sweden or California or Florida or Pennsylvania, there are at least 15 geographies that I personally know that have either already passed the legislation or they're about to pass a bill. And I am also familiar with the federal level, NHTSA level. So we don't need to guess. The responsibility is on the OEM, on the self-driving system. And that's the current benchmark that we have. For example, if you read the full legislation that passed in Germany just, I think, 3 months ago. So in case there is a failure, the remote person, remote system, teleoperation system, that is not the responsible part. The responsible part is always the SDS, the self-driving system. That is the final safety case is on the SDS. That's one comment. And the second comment, that's the fact of the matter today. And the second comment is that we are live today in Las Vegas with Motional, the joint venture of Hyundai and Aptiv, the most established robotaxi company in the world. And we have insurance. So it's insured, but still, I would say, quote unquote, most of the responsibility by far, without getting, of course, into confidential details, is on the robotaxi company, in this case, Motional. So yes, we are there. Yes, we provide the teleoperation system, the software, the cloud, everything. And yes, we have insurance. So it's not such a big deal to get this insurance. And this is also a fact of the matter. But the responsibility, bottom line, even if there is a failure in the way that the command was transferred or translated or something, the bottom line responsibility, the safety case, is on the customer, in this case, the OEM, the robotaxi company. And I imagine it would be similar with other customer cases where there is an OEM and there is a vehicle, and there is many checks and boundaries that needs to take place, regardless of what information is coming in. And that is, of course, the case when you have a level 4 system. I'm not talking about remotely driving some small robot that has no level 4 system.
Interesting. Amit, with your experience, you just mentioned that Germany has passed a bill. You have the experience in the US where they work state by state. Can Europe maybe do things smarter by making it a European rule instead of now Germany is the first one, then Holland will follow. And then you have the problem that Lynn mentioned, that it changes from country to country. What would be your advice then to the European Union to in terms of boosting this?
I wish. I mean, it's not for me to say, but I wish that it was all, you know, uniform and makes sense. If you go and I actually read the German. I did the Google Translate. I read the regulation in Germany. I think it makes sense. It clearly defines the roles and responsibilities and what is allowed and what is not allowed. I wish other countries would follow perhaps this kind of notion. But you already have good starts. You have Netherlands and Finland and Sweden that passed all sorts of preliminary bills. I wish it was uniform and clear across all the EU.
Because the insurers are all European-wide or maybe worldwide, so why not do the same with the legislation around it?
Yeah, actually, the insurance we have in the US is coming from a British insurer. UK is big on insurance. There are many giants. So we got this one was coming from a UK insurer, but yeah.
Okay, great. I'd like to close the discussion on the legislation to not take all the nice topics of our next session away, but it was good to see it already popping up slightly. Very interesting insights that I've learned now that indeed security, for instance, is more than the ICT security you typically have, making sure there is no breach and so on, but that the automation again forms an additional layer of security by checking that there are no from a human coming no bad commands, so to say. So it's also on the functional level that you can add security through automation. And then also, indeed, if you want to be able to insure it, you need to have clear agreements on who's liable. And it seems to be the easiest if there is enough automation again in the vehicle so that you can say the liability lies in the automation part, unless you, like Amit said, you have smaller vehicles which are less dangerous, so to say, if there's no automation in place. So these are very interesting takeaways of this discussion. I'm looking at the time. I heard being mentioned hard stop, so I would go to the final question. We have 2 minutes left from Maxime Flamand from 5GAA. The question is, how do you see the tech and market evolution paths going from automated valet parking towards more extensive teleoperation use cases? Or are these use cases quite separate from your point of view?
So I'll go. So when you talk about teleoperations, like where is it being used now and where is it successful? I mean, if you look at mining, that is an area where a speaker in the first session had referenced that too. Teleoperations is used widely in mining now because it's dangerous, and so but it's also, if you think about it, the path of going down into a mine, it's pretty set. There aren't a whole lot of external parameters that come into it. There's not a lot of traffic. There's not cross things. So so that is a, you know, it's a, I think when you talk about the use cases for teleoperations, it's the, you know, you have to start somewhere. And so you start with these smaller cases where you have fewer external influencers coming into it, like versus being on a busy highway and you've got all this traffic and accidents happen and weather conditions and so forth. So you start somewhere. So to answer the question, I think that absolutely, you know, valet parking is one where you get started the technology continues to improve. There's the regulations, the communication, the infrastructure, the real-time communication that comes in, the networks, the 5Gs, all that stuff it's evolving, it's improving, and I think that we're going to start seeing this happen more and more. But you start where there's a more confined use case, and then it gets increased complexity. So I think that they all start to build on each other. So I think we're at the early stages. I think there's a lot more to come.
We feel the same in the port area. It's a little bit the same. We just heard that we need a controlled environment for autonomous transport. In the port, we need a controlled environment for more than the transport alone. Also, the security aspect is big, so less people, less accidents, but also less influence in the process. Mainly talking the criminality aspect. We have a lot of imports from South America, for example. So not having that much humans involved would also suit that side of our operations. So it goes hand in hand with, as a matter of speaking, with what autonomous transport would require.
Okay, thank you, Yala. I think this is great to see that we end up with similar conclusions as the first panel. So indeed, that we have to take it one step at a time. Start with design domains like valet parking, smaller things in the hardware and so on, and grow as we continue as the technology evolves, and all the rest that's needed next to these technologies. So with that, I think I would like to conclude this panel. I really want to thank all our speakers. I think we had a great debate. So thank you all for your openness and your eagerness to respond, because it's definitely online not always trivial. So thank you very much. Look forward to keeping track of all your work and keeping in touch. And a virtual applause. Yeah, that's the downside of. We have 84 participants now, so normally we'd have a big applause, but yeah, it's virtually we can imagine it. So thanks a lot.